Okay, good afternoon, everybody. Thank you so much for being here. We really appreciate you coming out. Thankfully, the weather kind of surpassed a little bit, but thank you again for being here. I'm Michelle with United Way of Southeast Louisiana, and we are really excited to be here today with all of you. I have the pleasure of introducing our team in a second, but again, sorry, I know I just said it, but the microphone was being a little strange, so I'll say it one more time. If you open up your folders, in here, there's a pre-survey. If you guys don't mind, after you finish eating, taking that pre-survey before we get all the way through the end of this, and then at the end of it, we'll ask you to take the backside, and when you walk out, we'll ask you for that survey in return and give you some nice little goodies that hopefully can keep you prepared in case of the storms. Hopefully they don't come, but we know it's just a matter of time, unfortunately. But we're excited to have you all here today with us. Help yourself to drink. The restrooms are back and right through those doors right there. If you need to get up at any time, please do. We will allow for Q&A throughout each person's presentations at the end. If you just hold your questions till they're finished, they'll open it up the floor to answer anything that you guys may have. So I would like to kick it off with Stephanie Kinlock. Stephanie is with Verizon as senior manager of all the things, corporate responsibility, but she's amazing, has been a wonderful partner. We're so excited that she's here with us today, and thanks to Verizon, we're able to do this today for all of you. So Stephanie.
Thanks, Michelle. Good afternoon or evening. Thank you so much for coming out, especially in the rain. As Michelle mentioned, I'm Stephanie Kinlock. I lead the climate equity portfolio at Verizon, and I am just thrilled to be here with you today to share a little bit more about a new project that we have underway. We just had a press event earlier today, and there is just such enthusiasm about this project. We've partnered with Hyfi. They are a climate tech startup, and we were initially introduced to them a few years back because they were one of the first winners of Verizon's Climate Resilience Prize, and we've formed a really strong partnership with them over the years. And we are also working very closely with United Way. So shout out to United Way and the entire team for all of the work that they've been doing to help get this project off the ground and for creating this evening's workshop that you are attending. So we want to share more about the project, which we will be deploying approximately 50 flood detection sensor solutions, flood detection sensors throughout the city of New Orleans. And then also we'll be hosting a series of these community education workshops to help you get better prepared for storms. Everyone knows we're in the midst of hurricane season. This season is projected to be a very active one. So this is really timely, especially what you witnessed and lived through earlier today with the downpour. That was just a regular afternoon downpour, but we're in the midst of hurricane season, so it's never too early to prepare for the next storm, both from a disaster standpoint, but then also from a financial standpoint. So we hope that you will find this valuable. Again, we're thrilled about the project. We're thrilled to have you here. And thank you again for joining. We have a couple other workshops scheduled in a few weeks in August 8th. So spread the word, tell a neighbor, tell a friend, tell your family, and help get the community prepared. We're really committed to community resilience and doing that through innovative technology. So thank you again for joining and hope to see you at the next one. And I'll pass it over to Brandon Wong, who is the CEO of Hyfi.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you, Stephanie. Thank you for joining us, especially 5 p.m. at the end of your day. So excited to be here. And coming from Michigan, it's great to see y'all are also weathering the weather to make it here. So again, I'm Brandon Wong, CEO, co-founder of Hyfi. And we are coming from the Great Lakes. That's myself and my co-founder, and the day basically that we get to meet Stephanie and Verizon and the rest of our team as well. And being based in the Great Lakes, we've learned a lot about how vital water is to the communities, to the environment, and we're seeing that's also something here for New Orleans as well. So just to step back a little bit, if you wouldn't, mind entertaining the idea of like just closing your eyes, just thinking back a few hours ago, it was drenched, right? It was a lot of rain. And even though these pictures were taken in nice weather, oftentimes it was dark, it was cold, it was downpouring. And we were students building and operating sensor networks to monitor streams and rivers for nonprofits, for municipal officials. And it was during that time where, our eyes were kind of opened up to this reality that there is not a lot of data available for first responders when it comes to things like urban flooding. And so this is, some photos from Detroit where there was significant flooding in 2014, and according to FEMA, that was the most expensive flood that year. And then even over the past decade, they've continued to have flooding, which was, surprising to me moving to Michigan, seeing like they have flooding as well. And the thing has been like over the past 10 years, this awareness about knowing where the flooding, where the hotspots are, but not necessarily knowing, oh, up here? We're good. Okay, cool. So knowing where the flood hotspots are, but not necessarily knowing when they're flooded. So across an entire city, there's a lot of area to cover, and a lot of potential for roadways and underpasses to be flooded out, to impact traffic, and a number of other facilities to be, flooded. So these are just some photos of, let me go back real quick, that Tim, he is the Director of Public Works for the city of Dearborn. Dearborn is known, if you can see right here, that's the Model T, that's Henry Ford's home. So they're known for cars, and it's a very car-driven community. And to be able to know if a car can go somewhere or not is actually a hard question to answer. So we've seen, like, through Tim and his police department, his fire department, they identified, some of these preliminary locations for us to begin to flesh out the prototypes for what we're going to be deploying here in New Orleans. Essentially focusing on vulnerable communities and essentially areas that are important to those communities. And that has basically materialized into what we now provide as a out-of-the-box, end-to-end early flood warning solution. And so it's a combination of some sensors that track the flooding, as well as a suite of web applications that you can access the data with, and then some real-time alerts too, just to show like what's happening on the ground, wherever it may be happening across the city. So ultimately, at the end of the day, it's just getting that information into the hands of the folks who know what to do with it. So, for example, when it comes to Tim and him working for the Public Works Department, this is an example of like a message that we'll send over to him, and then he'll send us things like, there's a huge monster logjam. Like, apparently that's what it looks like, but we added the emojis. So a lot of debris. And also, a few weeks later, there was a massive storm that rolled through the entire state. It was about 3 to 5 inches over 6 hours, which I think you guys got a lot more than that even in the past, afternoon. But it's a lot for Michigan. And that resulted in flooding at, these 4 locations in the city. And just to show you visually what that looks like, you may not recognize this as a golf course, but it is. So if you happen to tee off that day, good luck, because you got a massive water hazard. And then the high school, they are, instead of practicing football, it's probably water polo that day. And when it comes down to, again, traffic and roadways, there are 2 major roadways that feed Dearborn. This is one of them. And here's the sensor tracking the water level. And ultimately, we see like this car made it through the barrier, but then otherwise the city was able to dispatch their crew, close off this road, and this stretch of cars go for miles down. So they're able to see, like, based off of the sensor reading, the water levels are increasing. We've heard like even like 6 inches of water is enough to float a car. So for over 17 hours, that roadway became essentially a waterway. So that's a long time to close off this road. And while that's going on, there's another bridge, and this is the other way to get into Dearborn. So closing this bridge off signifies that they need to send everyone over an hour out of their way just to get back into the city. So it was a very important thing for them to decide, like, do we need to close this bridge off too? Do we need to send all the other communications out just to let folks know that this is not a passable route? So this is where we see the data that's increasing, and this purple line signifies basically the bottom of that bridge. And if the water gets any higher, it risks literally pushing the bridge over. And it risks that they need to hire an engineering crew to do a bridge inspection. So by being able to look at this data, they are able to go back to the State Department of Transportation, tell them, we don't need to close this bridge. The rain is past. The water levels are starting to trend downward. We're going to keep this bridge open. So hearing from Tim, his response back from this was saying that he was excited. He was raving to the mayor. He basically had data to justify his decision to keep this bridge open. So that's what this technology, we hope, promises to enable for when we launch this here in New Orleans. And right now, there's going to be ways of getting this information into crews and the city, ways of getting this information to their own phones in real time. And we're also excited to work with communities and community members like yourselves to figure out what are good ways to also share this information. So this is an example of some other discussions that we've had and some of the feedback that we've gotten. And ultimately, like, we've been fortunate to work with a lot of A-teams, like I imagine you all are as well. But we've seen text messages, but another one that popped up was mapping. So what we're imagining is what this could evolve into is beyond just something that the city can use, something that you can use as well. So when you're driving, it could be integrated with, say, like Waze or Google Maps, or not just something that you have to go find on a website, but this information comes to you, so you could figure out like what is happening on the ground, and maybe even just have like Google Maps redirect you based off of what's happening on the ground, so you don't have to make those decisions, or to better see what's happening if you have a loved one who's say in the next neighborhood over or something like that, to keep an eye on what's going on. So that's what we imagine. And so just a little bit about the technology itself. It is wireless in several ways. One of them is wireless, like it uses Verizon's network to send out this data. The other way it's wireless is, this is really it. Like you may think about technologies, it may need a cable to plug it in, but you don't. It's actually just battery powered. And as you can maybe see, there's a wraparound solar panel here. So that keeps the battery charged and ensures that the unit will perform, long-term performance with minimal maintenance. And the last piece is that it basically sends a sonar signal down to, to the roadway beneath it. And as the water level goes up and down, it'll detect that change in water levels and basically report that back to the sensor, to like your phones or the app or whatever it may be. Let me see. I'm just going to pass this around. So it's always fun to have this on hand. There's two pieces to it. So if you wouldn't mind, pushing, like this gray cone goes in that little slot first, and then it should clip. There you go. So that's the last piece. Is I mentioned we used to be, students and engineers wiggling these wires to assemble this network, but now it's just a matter of taking, this unit, clipping it together, and as soon as that's in, it's operational, it's running, it's reporting the data. So, a unit like that, we could take and attach it to, say, the nearest intersection that may have flooded, and now start reporting what the water levels are doing. And that also means, like, if there is any issues with the unit, just like old school Netflix, but instead of DVDs, you get one of these. So just mail it in put it in the mail, and then we'll send you a new one. And anyone could really install one of these to keep the network operational and running. You don't need to call me or someone more technical to fix it. So that's the exciting piece about it. It installs using just off-the-shelf hardware from your local mom and pop shop. So these are just some examples of what that may look like. As well as some photos of our crew when we've been installing these at other various places where we were, fleshing out the details with these technologies. So some photos, especially around like roadways and underpasses, things like that. In Michigan, we get snow. So here's a picture of that. And then in Cleveland as well, there's another, those are one of the earliest pilots that, we had to learn a lot of lessons with these technologies. But one of the things that we've been able to do is, place these monitors where communities may not always report that they flooded. So, or alternatively, it could be it's hard to get to because the roadway is closed out. So these monitors can stay there 24/7 and continue to collect the data years on end. And what that means is we can identify which assets may be more likely to flood, begin to visualize what those flooded extents look like, and say it's not just this intersection, but broader parts of, the neighboring buildings, as well as this is a little more technical, but, taking additional data, being able to, process that, say, using the similar tools like may go into what ChatGPT does and begin to analyze what the future may look like in terms of past historical data and figuring out where infrastructure is doing well, where it may need to be improved, and ensuring that investments are properly made to best ensure that a community can be, resilient moving forward with some data to support those decisions. So this is an example of kind of where that's heading now, is being able to take some information, visualize it, and then see what, ahead of time, what may be happening on the ground. A bit of an overview about this project and this pilot. So it will be going on for 1 year. And, we've already taken care of steps 1 and 2. We've been fortunate to work with Verizon and identify that we're going to be working with United Way here, and then identify New Orleans as this is going to be the place across anywhere in the nation. We're going to kick it off here. So we'll be carrying out the pilot, and then 50 sensors are going to be going in starting in the next few weeks. We already have 2 in, actually. So I'll show you a couple of photos of that in a second. And then, and from there, figuring out how do we customize this, make sure that this is something that could be used by city staff as well as residents to make sure that this is an informational and, accessible way of accessing storm data. So, not a moment too soon, perhaps, because, we've already seen some hurricanes rolling this season. And we've been looking at a lot of historical data with the city. So these are reported flood reports from 311s and 411s. Also looking at modeled 100-year floodplains, but as well as taking into account existing infrastructure like pumps and canals, but also working with United Way and others to figure out what are the community needs here. So all of these things together are being synthesized to figure out how do we place these sensors best to maximize the potential of this network. So a lot of these monitors will be going in intersections above roads. So this is what you'll see is a lot of these utility poles will be installing sensors that way. But then on the east bank and the west bank, we've already added these at some of the canals. So this is one of them. And then another one. So it was a month ago now, yeah, just about. Yeah, so these have been live for over a month. They're still doing well. They're reporting as we expect them to. And we're very excited to see what the next 20 are going to look like, and then ultimately how we lay out the rest of the 50. So with that, this is, that map. You could also see it here. And we're excited just to see what that'll, help produce in terms of making data more accessible to the city as well as everyone here in this room. So with that, I'll hand it over to Chris unless you guys have any questions. Okay.
All right, thank you, sir. Yeah. All right, good evening. Thank you, Brandon, Stephanie. So great. Now we've got something really, really cool to play with, right? Real-time data about how our streets flood. So I want to talk a little bit. Am I pointing this in the right direction? Yeah, all right. Back again. At any rate, I'm Chris Cameron. I'm the executive director of Hands On New Orleans. We are a local nonprofit. We were born immediately post-Katrina. So I've spent my entire career, which is now 30 years, in the realm of disaster management, primarily coming from a nonprofit perspective. I'm currently a board member of Louisiana VOAD, which is Voluntary Organizations Active in Disasters. This is all the nonprofits that get together that do the things before, during, and after disaster. It kind of makes sense. Who sets up our temporary shelters? Red Cross. Who feeds us? Second Harvest. right? My particular role statewide is when we are severely impacted at a federal declaration, suddenly people are popping up everywhere with items and items that you need. I run the statewide donations warehouse management program. So like I've said, I have 30 years of experience doing natural disaster and also man-made disaster. What I want to really focus on is working on, to identify, recognize, prepare, take action, and then what we really need to understand. Some of this may be like 101, it may be repetition, but just bear with me with that. Okay, so I want to talk about the 3 levels of disaster from not necessarily the way that we all have experienced. I was here pre-Katrina, we've all lived through all the disasters, right? More about how it looks to the emergency management professionals. There are 3 levels: local, state, national, right? Within that, it all comes down to who is in charge and how are we getting our information. After the 9/11 terrorist attacks, the federal government realized that 50 states had 50 different emergency operation methods of working. People were not using the same vocabulary. They were not using the same playbook. So the military developed a plan called the National Incident Management System and mandated every state have one. That's when we all got, right, Homeland Security offices. And so it started at the state, cities, and it keeps going down. So we're all in the same playbook. So in the event of a local emergency, really Conald Arlen at NOSEP, right, is in charge. He's calling all of the shots because all of the city departments and then the supporting nonprofits that are involved in that are all sitting at the same table with the same bit of information. So the key takeaway here is understanding, and it'll keep kind of graduating, NOLA ready is the official word, right? That is, so there's information in your packet about how to sign up if you're not already getting email and text alerts. That is the information that city officials are making decisions on, right? Behind the scenes, it's a lot more complex because we're getting a lot more data with that, but that is the official communication piece. And then kind of what do I do as an individual resident? Here's the bottom line. It's not going to be pretty, but it's the truth. In every level of incident, you are on your own, right? The fire department, the police department, EMS will come save you individually. Everyone else working to manage that disaster response is working at a systems level. Does that make sense? So that's kind of one of the big key takeaways to know how we're getting the information. Next.
Sorry.
Yep.
NOLA Ready is available in different languages.
Oh, and NOLA Ready is available. Yes, thank you. So same thing, what happens at the state level, Smart 911. This is a profile that you can set up as an individual. You'll still get all the same state emergency information, but what you're actually putting in there is to say, hey, I have a mobility issue. Hey, I have a hearing issue. Hey, I have diabetes. I have whatever is happening. That is the system that EMS can pull up while they're en route to come help you. So that's a very important resource to understand. With that, typically, again, you're still on your own, but now we've got state resources being activated. And then we get to the federal disaster, which is pretty much everybody is activated. At that point, FEMA, Homeland Security is running the show. FEMA's role, this is a big misconception that I hear, and I know it gets confusing because, right, they're giving us money to help. That's part of it, but really what they're doing is FEMA is allocating money to the state for an injection of cash and then administering an individual assistance program. And we're going to get to kind of the heart of the matter because I want to spend a lot of our time talking about some of the great new changes for this hurricane season that are coming up. All right, how to prepare and respond. The biggest thing here, it's just common sense, but whether you believe climate change is human-made or just natural cycle, it doesn't negate the fact, y'all, we've been getting strange weather, right? We really have. It's the intensity and the frequency of the hurricanes. It's how fast they develop. We are still under a federal mandate to have a citywide evacuation plan so we don't repeat Katrina, but there's not enough time to set that up. There just isn't. It takes 48 hours to activate everyone to help people get out. So if you started to notice things like, oh, the city has cooling centers, right? That's new because we're under extreme heat. Those are going to become basically for people who cannot evacuate and the aftermath. Those centers are going to open up as resource centers kind of in the neighborhoods. Colin Arnold will not tell you that, but that's really what's going to happen with that. So we need to be thinking about that. Bayou Sauvage caught on fire. West Louisiana caught on fire. We've never had fires. What is the air quality? Does that make sense? So just begin thinking about the level of vulnerabilities as we're, here. Obviously, you want to create your emergency plan. You want to slowly accumulate all the supplies that you need. Information is in your packets regarding that. Some of the things that you might want to think about, because we all love our cell phones. We all love battery-operated everything. We even love our portable chargers. But in the event of, a 5-week power outage, right, those things die. In your kit or in your planning, kind of go back to paper and pencil. Really think about, write down the actual phone numbers of your contacts, because you can't tell Siri to call a person any longer. Does it make sense? So just drill down and kind of think about back to basics. Some of y'all are my age. So we know how to memorize a phone number, right? Okay. How do you prepare and respond to local disaster? Anyone 60 years or older is eligible to be on the city's special needs registry. You just simply call 311. Again, you're going to share some personal information with the city about your personal conditions, what's happening in your household, your mobility, whatever is happening with you. And that goes to the city health department. So it's protected under HIPAA, right? But it gives the emergency responders special information so to understand, hey, I am more vulnerable than, the Tulane student who refuses to evacuate because they're 20, right? In state disasters, we've already covered about your 911 SMART profile. And then for federal disasters, FEMA is still a complicated process, even with some of the changes. So spend time trying to understand what are all the programs and what does that mean with that. You should always apply for individual assistance. What that means is that if we are under a federally declared emergency and your home, whether you're renting or owning, you are eligible to receive individual assistance, regardless of your wealth level, whether you're insured, underinsured, things like that. What are the big changes that are coming up? This is very exciting because people like me that come from nonprofits, we kind of, all get together, we listen and hear your concerns, whether it's in settings like this, about what happened in the past, or in real time while we are responding to you in the immediate aftermath. And we keep passing those up until we finally get some changes. So under this current presidential administration, we do have new changes that became effective in March. So if God forbid we get hit with something bad, these are the new rules. The first thing is what's called serious needs assistance. This is an automatic $750 cash infusion into your bank account. So a lot of the new website is going to make it much, much easier to apply. If anyone has had to apply for individual assistance in the past, it was just pages and pages, and you're like, I don't even know what I'm answering anymore. They have now made it much more intuitive. So it's kind of like if you say yes to this, then it'll take you somewhere. If you say no, you just start skipping sections. Make sense? Okay. New displacement assistance. This is going to be upfront funding. If you have evacuated, however, and wherever you are, but you're still impacted and you can't get in, the new rule is FEMA does not care whether you're in a hotel, You could be staying with a family member who says, hey, you can stay here, but I need help with rent, right? It doesn't matter. There will be an amount of money that residents can have to make their own decisions based on your own situation, and it's all going to be, right? It's going to be completely valid use of that federal aid, which is really, really helpful. Almost all a lot of red tape has been eliminated with that. The two biggest things here is that FEMA, in the past, right, you said, okay, well, my roof blew off, and they sent out an inspector. And then the inspector said, the roof probably should have been changed a couple of years ago, right? There was some deferred maintenance. That meant you were not eligible for any FEMA money with that. That has changed now. So now they're going to cover $42,500 regardless of whether you kept up your home or not. That's really critical. Why are they doing that? The government, finally, common sense, has figured out it is better, right, to pay for a whole brand new fortified roof, right, for a homeowner, than to keep having to pay or like a roof over and over again. Does that make sense? So that's a huge benefit there. Other things, for those of you that may be self-employed or a gig worker, it really takes out the red tape about or recognizes the fact that you were in that industry and that you still need individual assistance. The next biggest change is in terms of what's called the habitability of a house. The government standard is that at the end of the day, all of these different aid programs want to make your home safe, sanitary, and secure. So again, it's removing some of those other barriers where FEMA would automatically say, sorry, we can't help you, right? It also does, they offer a lot more flexibility, I guess, in terms of just proof of what you need. With that, it removes barriers for late applications for folks that were in longer-term housing, AKA the FEMA units. It makes it a lot more clear now about how long that rental program is going. Currently, and in the past, it was every 30 days you had to reapply to stay in your home. So it's going to shorten a lot of those types of things. And then also listed are some other FEMA and nonprofit support systems that are going. So I just wanted to kind of quickly cover that. I know it's a lot. Everything is written out up here in terms of this FEMA changes. We really want to get the word out because I really do think that it's going to make a very big difference for us and how we are planning and how we can access federal help a lot easier. So any questions? All right, with that, I will turn it over to Ms. LaToya of the Prosperity Center for United Way. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. My name is LaToya Ratcliffe. I am Director of Financial Capability, and we will be talking about saving for emergencies. The importance of saving for a disaster. Of course, we know a natural disaster is an unexpected event. So you want to make sure that you have enough to save for temporary housing, car repairs, and deductibles. We know homeowners insurance at an all-time high along with those deductibles, right? You don't want that deductible be the reason why your home cannot be repaired. You want to also have a savings to help bridge the gap between expenses and income. Those who experienced Hurricane Katrina, we know we lost our jobs, we lost our income because we were all displaced. If you had kids or other family members you were responsible for, that was a hardship where you had to focus on how you're going to take care of your kids or any other family member and still try to get everything that's needed during a disaster. So you want to make sure that you have that savings. Also, financial preparedness reduces stress. It allows you to focus on recovery. Again, when you are trying to get your home rebuilt or trying to even get back home, you don't need the extra stress of finances. How am I going to pay for this? Where can I get the money from? So that's another reason why it is very important to save for emergencies. Saving for a disaster on a limited budget. A lot of people are on fixed income and they feel like they cannot afford to save. I am a firm believer that a little goes a long way as long as you stay consistent. So every dollar counts. If you can only save $20 a month, it's $20 more in your savings account. Also, set small, achievable savings goals. So I'll give a quick example because I love to give examples to explain. If you have a savings goal of saving $200 a pay period, but in between those pay periods, you need to go into that savings to at least pull $100 out. Maybe you want to reduce that savings to at least $100 a pay period because you're still saving, but now you're not getting discouraged from keep going into that savings account. So save what you can afford to save. Identify areas you could cut back on spending on. We all love to eat. We live in New Orleans, right? We love going out to eat, trying new restaurants. But just eliminating one time a month on eating out and putting it into your savings account can be a big help. Also, entertainment. Those who have kids, try to do a no spending. Come up with creative ways, a movie night, a game night, going to the park. Just try to come up with ways where you can observe a no spending at least once a month and put that money you would use on entertainment into a savings account. Also, consider using automatic transfer to build your savings over time. Out of sight, out of mind. It takes the responsibility off of you and you are still saving. You can do this through your payroll or with your financial institution where they can transfer the money directly into your savings account. Most important things to save for, of course, hotels, evacuations. We heard about the FEMA changes, which is awesome, but you also want to be able to make sure that you are saving for shelter, okay? Also, food and water, those your needs. You need food, you need water. So you also want to make sure that you are saving for these type of things because we shop daily and we know food is high right now. Also, transportation repairs. You may have to take a long ride when you are evacuating, so you want to consider those repairs that you may have to put into your car, whether it's even changing a flat tire. You want to make sure that you're prepared for that. Medical bills during evacuation time. Some people can get sick or they're out of their climate, right? They're stressed or anything. You can incur medical bills. And last but not least, that wonderful deductible for insurance. So again, like I said before, you don't want that deductible to be the reason why your home cannot be repaired. So it's very important that you start saving for it. Steps to take during a disaster to save money. Document all damage for insurance purposes. Me personally, I say do an audit on your home before disaster. You can do a video audit. We all have smartphones. You can do a video audit, get the model number, the serial number of your items, or you can do a paper audit and take photos. You want to do that audit before disaster and after disaster so you can accurately report to your insurance company on your loss. Also, avoid impulse purchases. So when we are stressed, I don't know about y'all, I'll tell on myself, sometimes I shop, right? So we want to avoid those impulse purchases when we're saving for an emergency. So definitely, yes, the purse is nice, is on sale, but I really don't need it at this time, okay? And contact your creditors and explain your situation. Please don't think that, I'm going to just use the example. Don't think Chase, they watch the news, they see what's going on, they know I live in New Orleans. That is not the case. You want to contact your creditors and let them know I was a victim of a natural disaster, I'm displaced right now, because they have alternative payment options for you where it won't hinder your credit. You won't be reported for a late or missed payment. So you want to make sure that you reach out to them and let them know what is going on. And utilize your resources in your community. We know when disaster hit, United Way is there, but we're not the only nonprofit that's there. So make sure you find out all the resources within your community to help when you're faced with a disaster. And by being financially prepared, you can weather the storm. But know that United Way is here to help. We have our wonderful prosperity centers, we have our financial capability specialists, and we offer one-on-one financial coaching with you. So we will talk about savings, we'll talk about money management, we'll talk about building, and we'll talk, building the savings and building or repairing your credit. So take advantage of it. We are here to help you, and we want to bring hope back to your households. Thank you.
Thank you, LaToya. Thank you to all of our wonderful speakers. Let's give them one more round of applause, y'all. Thank you guys so much. So now if you can take out on your folders and flip that survey to the back, to that post survey. If you can do that before you leave us, we would really, really appreciate it. Thank you all again for coming out tonight. Please feel free to take any food on your way out. Our speakers will be staying around if you want to talk to them or have any questions one-on-one. Please feel free to do so. And we welcome you back to the Prosperity Center, as LaToya just mentioned. We're here, or they're here, especially 24/7. You'll see LaToya and Chiquita and their entire team, and they do a wonderful job here. So please come back, come visit us, and please tell others about it as well. So thank you again for coming, and y'all have a good night.